If you're the sort of person who pays attention to international headlines, then you might already know the name Samuel Paty. Paty was a French middle school teacher who committed the thought crime of showing his students one of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammed during a class on freedom of expression. In retaliation for this heinous act against the religion of peace, Paty was, on October 16th, peacefully beheaded with a 12-inch knife on the streets of Paris. The Islamic terrorist who murdered Paty was, to absolutely nobody's surprise, an 18-year-old refugee. What you might not know, however, is that Paty's murder inspired an unknown Norwegian to hang up Kurt Vestergaard's famous Muhammed caricature at several public locations in the Norwegian city Little Current. This act of solidarity inspired a family man living in the Norwegian city Kingsburg to do the same. What happened next is going to shock you. The family man in Kingsburg, hitherto referred to as Family Man, was interviewed by Human Rights Service, a Norwegian nonprofit, following an incident which took place on Monday the 19th. HRS notes that Family Man is self-employed before writing, quote, "The police came knocking. I defend freedom of speech. I have young kids. Is there anything I can do to protect our freedom of expression, given that so few people are willing to take a stand?" I thought. My conclusion was that the risk needs to be shared throughout the population. That is why I printed out the Muhammad caricatures and hung them up, deliberately, at busy places around town. At the mall, bus stops, the movie theater. Places where a lot of people would see them. At 9:30 the same night, 4 police officers came knocking at my door. The whole thing was surreal, Family Man tells HRS. The police were friendly, he continues, but they were concerned that people, Muslims, could be hurt and offended.
How dare you?
Those were the words they used. Family Man asked the police whether it really was, according to Norwegian law, illegal to offend people. The police had to admit that it was, he told HRS. So, the reason why the police had to admit this to Family Man is because while Norway's constitution supposedly guarantees freedom of speech, hate speech is actually a crime in Norway. The section of the Norwegian Penal Code that deals with hate speech is Chapter 20, paragraph 185. It reads, quote, "Any person who recklessly or with gross negligence puts forward a discriminatory or hateful utterance in public shall be punished with a fine or imprisonment of up to 3 years. Symbols are also considered utterances. Those who in the presence of others, which means outside of the public space, recklessly or with gross negligence puts forward such an utterance shall be punished with a fine or imprisonment of up to 1 year. An utterance is to be considered discriminatory or hateful if the utterance threatens or mocks somebody, or promotes hatred, persecution, or contempt for somebody because of their A. Skin color or national or ethnic origin, B. Religion or livssyn. Livssyn in this context means a non-religious worldview. So if you were to discriminate against somebody for being a humanist, I believe that this would prohibit that. C. Homosexual orientation, or D. Cognitive, physical, or medical disabilities." Then came the bombshell, according to Family Man. Society does not want this, the police said. Who do the police think they are? What gives them the right to define what we want as citizens? Family Man asks. Utterances that one dislikes are precisely those that society is supposed to defend. It is absolutely amazing that one needs to have discussions like this with European police officers in 2020. Refused to obey orders. Family Man was informed that a police lawyer had been assigned to the case. He was asked never to do anything like this again. He was also instructed to go around and take down all the caricatures of Muhammad that he had hung up. "I don't want to do that," I answered. The crime he was being confronted with was that he had not applied for permission to hang up the posters. Family Man answered affirmatively that he was aware of the charges, but responded to the police like so. "If I had hung up posters of Karl Marx, Buddha, or Jesus, would that also have resulted in 4 police officers showing up at my door with his instructions to remove the posters?" "It's not possible to know that," was the answer I got.
I'm sorry, I'm allergic to bullshit.
Family Man continues, "Honestly, has anyone in this town at any point ever been charged for hanging up posters without permission? I'm disturbed by the fact that the police would respond in this way. I read in our local newspaper that this is the same police force that did not have the capacity to respond to a car accident the following night. Family Man is upset by the fact that his young children were woken up, and of course the children were curious as to why the police were at the door. One of the younger ones, less than 10 years old, asked, 'Daddy, what are the police doing here?' A bad movie. Family Man informs us that the police openly threatened him with prosecution. I'm principally angered by this. This is not how a liberal democracy is supposed to function, Family Man says. who was raised in the Middle East and questions whether he must follow Sharia law here in Norway as well. The whole thing seems like a bad movie, he opines.
Yeah, bad movie indeed. I mean, this case is totally batshit crazy. It appears as if we have, in Family Man, the perfect immigrant. By that, I mean, he obviously speaks the language. I mean, he probably speaks the language better than I do. Within this relatively short interview, there were multiple words that I had never heard before, that I had to look up in order to translate. Furthermore, this guy has a job. I mean, not only does he have a job and pay taxes, he's self-employed, which means that nobody can complain that he took their jobs, because he didn't. He created his own job. On top of all that, this guy is literally risking his neck to stand up for and defend one of the fundamental values of our society. Why is the freedom of speech such a fundamental and important value? Well, I mean, take a look at history. You don't gotta go that far back before people were literally burning other people alive for blasphemy, for questioning the church's authority, for saying things that were deemed to be offensive against the church. Europeans in general have no idea what it's like to live under a theocracy. But this guy, this Chad of an immigrant, Family Man, he knows what that's like. He grew up in a place that had Sharia law. And for all we know, this guy is now here because he's escaped from that situation. And so, having witnessed what the alternatives to Western democracies are, this guy chose to risk his own life in order to defend our society. And what was the reaction that he was met with? 4 police officers showing up at his door, threatening him with prosecution unless he apologized for the blasphemy that he'd committed. This situation rivals anything that Kafka or Orwell could possibly have dreamed up.
HRS concludes by writing, "Why the police chose to prioritize some pieces of paper on a Monday night is a question we are going to try and answer tomorrow." Lo and behold, the very next day, HRS releases this article. Police confirm Muhammed action against Family Man. 4 police officers showed up to a Family Man's house on Monday night because he had hung up caricatures of Muhammad in Kingsburg. Local police have confirmed to HRS that this is indeed the case. Poorly planned. HRS has been in contact with local police in Kingsburg, which is where the event took place. The acting head of investigations for the Southeastern Police District, Jarle Lindeland, confirms that 4 officers showed up at our source's door last Monday night. We also received confirmation that Family Man was, quote, encouraged to personally remove the posters of Kurt Vestergaard's historical Muhammad caricature. Personally removing the drawings would have been conciliatory towards those who might feel offended, Lindeland tells HRS, who adds that the crime committed in this case was failing to apply for permission prior to hanging up the drawings. Family Man rejected the police's recommendation to remove the drawings. Lindeland emphasizes that the police initiated a conversation with Family Man to gain insight into the motives he had for hanging up the drawings. It seems poorly thought out, Lindeland says. It is natural for the police to investigate what Family Man's thoughts are regarding his own actions, what the goal was. This is because his actions might result in unwanted reactions, Lindeland continues, pointing specifically to the Sion demonstrations which triggered violent counter-protests.
The demonstrations being referred to here are anti-Islamic demonstrations organized by a group called Stop the Islamification of Norway. At most, if not all, of the demonstrations that they have arranged during the past year, the members of Sion who were out demonstrating have been physically attacked for, amongst other things, setting fire to a Quran.
Disturbance of the peace. Lindeland tells HRS the police are fearful that such actions might, quote, escalate. Police could be faced with a disturbance of the peace, Lindeland adds. Strong powers. Lindeland is of the opinion that hanging up Muhammad caricatures is a legal, quote, gray zone with regards to the freedom of expression. The caricatures are highly polarizing. A fresh example is the recent event in France, the murder of Samuel Paty, HRS's emphasis. There are strong powers that do not accept such actions, he continues. Would the police have reacted in a similar fashion if someone had hung up offensive caricatures of Jesus? HRS asks. To that, I have no comment.
And so finally, we arrive at the crux of the matter. These police officers don't give a rat's ass about defending Family Man's rights. Their concern is that a violent mob is going to show up at their jurisdiction. They are worried about the prospect of their job becoming more difficult, because religious lunatics might decide that they don't like what Family Man did and want to make an example of him, just like they did Samuel Paty. And let's not kid ourselves. These strong powers that Lindeland is referring to, they are Muslims. The reason Lindeland fails to provide a comment when asked if the police would have removed similar caricatures of other religious figures is because everybody knows that that would not happen. There is only one religion that receives special protection from the authorities. There's only one religion that is demanding that everyone else in society follow its edicts, and threatening those who do not comply with violence, and indeed carrying out those threats of violence. That religion is Islam. Now, I don't mean to say that every single Muslim is going to turn into a homicidal maniac at the sight of a few drawings. Most Muslims are just like most other people, peaceful, law-abiding citizens. There are multiple things that can be true simultaneously. On the one hand, most Muslims can indeed be peaceful, whilst on the other hand, there is now a preponderance of evidence suggesting that certain interpretations of Islam are having a disastrous effect on our society. We need to be able to have an honest discussion about these things. If we aren't even able to discuss these problems, we are never going to arrive at a solution, and the problem isn't just going to go away on its own. We've now reached a point where the police are actively trying to shut people who rock the boat too much up. This is unacceptable. Criticizing religious fundamentalists does not automatically make you a racist. If we allow violent thugs to dictate what is and is not allowed within our country, we are going to become a society of the sort that Family Man was trying to escape from to begin with.